The stars burned cold and distant above the battlefield. Machines roared and lasers flashed through the dark sky as the war raged on. Humans fought with everything they had, but the enemy was strong and merciless. Among the alien soldiers, one figure stood apart, tall, powerful, covered in heavy armor that no weapon could break. She was called Aelara, the strongest warrior in the enemy fleet. Her armor was not just metal. It was a living shield, layered with ancient technology no one could understand. Every attack from the humans bounced off like raindrops on stone. Her face was hidden behind a glowing visor, her movements silent. But deadly, the humans tried everything. They sent their best fighters, their sharpest weapons, and their most secret tactics, but nothing worked. Aelara's armor stayed unbroken, her presence a symbol of hopelessness for the soldiers who saw her advance. She never spoke, never showed fear, never missed a strike. The war had lasted for months, and hope was fading. Commander Rylan watched the battlefield from the command ship, his heart heavy. He had heard stories of Aelara, how she was born into a clan of warriors and raised to be invincible. Many had tried to break her armor, but all had failed. Now she was coming for Earth, the last stronghold of humanity. Rylan had one plan left. He would send his best scout, a young man named Jax, who was not just skilled but also curious and brave. Jax was different from others. He did not believe only in weapons or strength. He believed in understanding the enemy, in finding their weakness not by force, but by thought. When Jax landed on the ruined planet, the air was thick with smoke and dust. The ground shook beneath him as giant machines moved in the distance. He felt fear, but also a strange excitement. This mission was more than a fight. It was a chance to change everything. Jax moved carefully, avoiding patrols and traps. He had a small device that could scan energy patterns, something the others ignored. As he walked near the battlefield, he saw Aelara. She was standing alone now, her armor shining under the burning sun. She looked like a statue, unmoving and cold. Suddenly, Jax's scanner beeped. The energy from her armor was different from what he expected. It was not just a shield, it was alive. It changed and adapted with every attack. He realized that to open her armor, he could not use brute force. He needed to understand it. Jax studied her movements from a distance. He noticed that when she moved her left arm, a small panel on her back shifted slightly. It was almost invisible, but it was there. He wondered if this was the key to breaking her defense. Days passed. Jax followed her, learning her patterns and habits. He saw that Aelara never took off her armor, not even to rest. The armor was her life and her prison at the same time. He felt a strange respect for her strength and loneliness. One night, Jax made a decision. He would try to communicate with her. He sent a simple message through the device, using light signals and sounds. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, a small light blinked on her visor. It was a sign that she understood. Jax approached. Carefully, he spoke softly, telling her that he did not want to fight but to learn. He showed her his hands, empty and open. To his surprise, Aelara lowered her weapon slightly. For the first time, the human and the alien warrior looked at each other not as enemies, but as beings who might understand. What happened next changed the course of the war. Jax found a way to touch the armor, not with weapons, but with his mind and heart. The secret of her armor was not in its strength, but in the trust it needed. And Jax was the first human to find the way inside. After that first contact, everything changed for Jax. He could feel the heavy weight of the armor lessening, as if it was listening to him. Aelara's visor glowed softly, and she did not attack. The battlefield grew quiet around them, like time was holding its breath. Jax knew this moment was fragile. He took slow steps closer, keeping his hands open and calm. He reached out carefully and touched the edge of her armor. It felt cold but alive, like metal mixed with a soft pulse. Aelara did not pull away. Instead, she shifted her body slightly, allowing Jax's fingers to find the small panel he had seen before. His scanner showed a flicker of light from inside. And then a soft hum began. The armor started to change. Plates moved like a puzzle unlocking itself. Jax watched in wonder as parts of the armor slid apart, revealing glowing lines underneath. He saw strength, but also something fragile hidden beneath. Aelara's eyes were visible now. They were bright and full of surprise. For the first time, Jax saw her face without the mask, a face both fierce and tired. She did not speak, but in her eyes was a question. Why? Jax smiled gently. He told her that he wanted to help, not hurt. The war had made enemies, but maybe it could also bring understanding. He reached out with his other hand and touched the glowing lines on her chest. Armor. A soft light spread from the armor into Jax's palm. It was like a connection, a bridge between two worlds. The armor was not just protection, it was a living part of Aelara. It had memories and feelings locked inside. Aelara took a deep breath and finally spoke, her voice low and quiet but clear. She said her armor was a curse as much as a gift. It protected her from death, but kept her trapped. No one had ever broken through because they only tried to break her body, not reach her soul. Jax listened carefully. He told her about Earth and its people, how humans fought not just with weapons, but with hope and heart. He shared stories of courage, friendship, and peace. Slowly, Aelara began to lower her defenses. The war was still raging far away, but here, in this moment, a human and an alien warrior were finding a new path. They sat together near the ruins, sharing silence and understanding. Jax knew that breaking the armor was only the start. Aelara told him about her people, their struggles and their fears. She said the armor was made to protect, but also to punish. It was designed to keep warriors strong and obedient. But Aelara had broken from their control, becoming a lone fighter searching for freedom. Jax realized that if they could free Aelara from her armor's hold, they could also stop the war. Her people might listen if she returned not as a weapon, but as a leader who had changed. But freeing her would not be easy. The armor was ancient and bound by old rules. Jax's mind raced to find a way. He knew that technology alone would not work. He needed something deeper, something that came from trust and hope. Suddenly, a signal from the command ship interrupted their peace. Ryland's voice came through Jax's communicator. The enemy forces were preparing a final attack on Earth. Time was running out. Jax stood and looked at Aelara. She nodded silently. They had a chance to change the future, but only if they acted. Now, together, they planned to stop the attack by showing the enemy that their greatest warrior was no longer their slave, but their ally. As they moved toward the battlefield, Jax felt a new strength in him. He was no longer just a scout or a soldier. He was a bridge between two worlds, carrying the hope of peace inside him. The war was not over, but something new had begun. The armor that no one could open was now opening itself to a human who believed in more than just fighting. Asterisk. Jax and Aelara moved quickly through the broken lands toward the battlefield. The sky was heavy with dark clouds, and distant explosions shook the ground. Soldiers shouted orders, and machines rumbled like thunder, but Jax felt calm inside. He knew this was their moment to change everything. As they walked, Aelara's armor continued to shift and glow softly. It was less heavy now, but still powerful. She moved with grace, no longer the cold weapon of war, but something new, someone who had hope. Jax explained their plan to her. They would reach the enemy command center and send a message. The message would tell the enemy that their strongest warrior was free and would not fight for them anymore. It was a risk, but it was their only chance. Aelara listened carefully. She remembered the strict rules her people lived by, where loyalty was forced and weakness punished. To betray them was dangerous, but she also wanted peace. She nodded, trusting Jax's words. When they reached the edge of the battlefield, they hid behind ruins. The enemy soldiers were everywhere, watching for any sign of trouble. Jax's heart raced. One wrong step, and they could be captured, or killed. Aelara touched Jax's arm. Her eyes showed strength and calm. Together, they moved forward, using shadows and broken walls as cover. Jax sent a silent signal to the command ship, asking for support and to prepare for what was coming. Inside the enemy command center, confusion began to grow. The soldiers saw their strongest warrior missing, and rumors spread quickly. Some thought she had been captured, others that she was dead. None knew the truth yet. Jax and Aelara reached the communication tower. It was tall and guarded by fierce soldiers. Jax's hands trembled as he hacked the controls. Aelara stood watch, ready to fight if needed. Suddenly, alarms blared. Soldiers rushed toward them, weapons raised. Aelara's armor glowed bright, and she moved fast. She fought not as a cold machine, but with purpose and care. She dodged attacks and protected Jax. Jax finished sending the message. It was clear and strong. Aelara is free. She will not fight for you. She stands for peace. End this war. The message repeated in every language the enemy could hear. The soldiers hesitated, unsure what to do. Aelara stepped forward and spoke. Her voice was steady and filled with power. She told them of her freedom and her wish for peace. She said the war was destroying both sides and that they must stop before it was too late. Some soldiers lowered their weapons. Others looked angry and confused. But the message was clear. Aelara was no longer their weapon, but their choice. Jax and Aelara moved back toward their own lines, knowing the hardest part was still ahead. The war was far from over, and many would not accept this change easily. But they had started something new, a chance for peace born from trust and courage. As they returned, the sun broke through the clouds. Its light warmed the cold battlefield. Jax looked at Aelara and saw not just an alien warrior, but a friend and an ally. Together, they would face whatever came next. Back at the human command ship, Commander Rylan watched the unfolding events. With hope and worry, the message from Aelara shocked everyone. No one had imagined that the strongest enemy warrior would turn against her own people. Rylan knew the war could end if others followed her lead. But he also knew that many enemies were loyal to old rules and hated humans with a deep fire. The battle was far from over. Jax and Aelara stood side by side, preparing to face the next challenge. Aelara's armor was now a symbol of freedom, not fear. The glowing panels shone with new light, reflecting her choice to protect life rather than destroy it. Aelara spoke quietly to Jax. She told him about the leaders of her people who would never accept peace. They were proud and cruel, believing in strength only through war. They would try to stop her and punish those who followed. Jax listened and thought about what they could do. They needed proof that peace was possible. They needed to show the enemy that humans and aliens could work together, that war was not the only answer. Suddenly, a new message arrived. It was from a small group of alien soldiers who had seen Aelara's change. They wanted to meet and talk. They did not want more fighting. Rylan agreed to send a team. Jax, Aelara, and a few trusted soldiers prepared to meet these alien rebels. It was a risky move, but it might be the key to ending the war. The meeting took place on a neutral planet, a place torn by battles but untouched by leaders. The alien rebels wore lighter armor, their faces showing tired hope. They looked at Aelara with respect and at Jax with curiosity. The leader spoke first. He told stories of the war's pain, the loss of friends and homes. He said many soldiers were tired of fighting and wanted a future without blood. Aelara shared her story too, the curse of her armor, the loneliness, and her choice to break free. She said she wanted to lead her people away from war and toward peace. Jax added stories of Earth, of humans who had suffered, but still believed in kindness and friendship. He spoke of trust and hope as the strongest weapons. The aliens listened, and slowly, their faces softened. They asked questions and shared fears. The meeting was long and hard, but it planted a seed of change. But not all was calm. Far away, the old leaders of Aelara's people gathered in anger. They could not forgive her betrayal. They planned to send a powerful force to crush the rebels and bring Aelara back under their control. The war was not over. It was about to become even more dangerous. The warning came quickly. Scouts reported a massive fleet moving toward the neutral planet. The old leaders were sending their strongest warriors to crush the rebels and capture Aelara. Jax and Aelara prepared their small group for battle. They knew they were outnumbered, but they believed in something stronger than numbers: trust and hope. Aelara's armor glowed brighter than ever. It was no longer just a shield but a symbol of her freedom and the future she wanted to build. She moved with power and purpose. The rebels joined them, ready to fight not for war but for peace. Their weapons were ready, but their hearts were stronger. As the enemy fleet arrived, the sky lit up with fire and explosions. Ships clashed, and warriors fought in the air and on the ground. The battle was fierce and desperate. Jax fought beside Aelara, protecting her and guiding the rebels. His mind raced, looking for ways to turn the fight in their favor. He used every skill and every idea he had learned. Aelara faced her old comrades. Their eyes burned with anger and betrayal. They fought hard, but Aelara's new strength was different. It was not just muscle or weapon, it was the power of choice and freedom. In the middle of the fight, Aelara found a chance to speak. She called out to her enemies, asking them to stop and listen. She told them about the future she dreamed of, a future without endless war and pain. Some warriors hesitated. Their loyalty was strong, but their hearts were tired. They saw something new in Aelara's eyes, something they had never seen before. The battle slowed. Weapons lowered. The old leader's forces faced a choice: continue the fight or join a new way. Jax and Aelara used this moment. They reached out to the soldiers, sharing words of peace and hope. They showed that the war could end, that enemies could become friends. Slowly, some warriors dropped their weapons and stepped back. The battlefield grew quiet, filled with a new kind of courage. The old leaders watched in rage and fear as their power began to crumble. They knew the war was losing its meaning. Jax looked at Aelara and saw the strength that came not from armor, but from the heart. Together, they had opened a path no one thought possible. The quiet after the battle was strange but welcome. Soldiers from both sides looked at each other, no longer enemies but uncertain friends. The war had taught them to fight, but now they had to learn to trust. Aelara stood tall among them. Her armor was still strong, but its glow was softer. It was no longer a cage but a part of who she chose to be. She looked at Jax and smiled, grateful for his courage and kindness. Jax felt a new hope growing inside him. They had taken the first step toward peace, but the path ahead was still hard. Many would not accept change easily, and old wounds ran deep. The leaders of Aelara's people sent a final message. They demanded her return and threatened to destroy any who followed her. The war was not over, but its meaning was shifting. Aelara and Jax decided to meet with these leaders. They knew that words would matter more than weapons now. They prepared for a journey to face those who still believed in war. On the way, Aelara shared stories of her childhood, how the armor was made for warriors but had trapped her spirit. She said she dreamed of a time when strength would mean protecting, not destroying. Jax listened and shared Earth stories of peace, of humans who had fought wars but learned to forgive. He told her that the greatest battles were won with understanding. When they reached the leaders, a tense silence filled the room. The old rulers looked at Aelara with suspicion and anger. They did not trust her change and saw Jax as a threat, but Aelara spoke with calm power. She told them that the armor's true strength came from choice, from the will to protect life. She said the war had cost too much and that the future could be different. Jax added that humans believed in hope and trust. He asked the leaders to join them, to build a new world together instead of fighting to the end. The leaders debated, their voices loud and harsh. Some wanted to kill Aelara for her betrayal. Others felt the war had gone too far. It was a moment of decision for their people. In the end, the leaders agreed to a truce. It was fragile but real. The war would stop, and talks of peace would begin. Aelara and Jax returned home as heroes, but their work was just beginning. They knew peace was not a gift, but a choice that every heart must make. After the truce, the world felt different. The silence from the war was strange but hopeful. People on both sides were tired and ready for peace. They looked to Aelara and Jax for guidance. Aelara traveled to many places, speaking to soldiers and leaders. She shared her story, how her armor had trapped her, but also how trust had set her free. Her words gave hope to those who had only known war. Jax helped build new bridges. He worked with humans and aliens, teaching them to understand each other. He believed that peace was built one step at a time, through kindness and patience. Not everyone was happy. Some old soldiers and leaders resisted the change. They wanted the war to continue, believing that only strength could protect their people. But their voices grew smaller with each passing day. One day, a group of rebels attacked a small village. It was a harsh reminder that peace was fragile. Aelara and Jax rushed to help, standing together to stop the violence. The battle was short, but fierce. Aelara's armor shone with new power, not for war, but for protection. She fought to save lives, not to destroy. Jax supported her, guiding their forces with calm and courage. After the fight, the village thanked them. People began to believe that peace could last. The war's wounds were healing slowly, but surely. Aelara looked at Jax and smiled. They had come far from the battlefield where they first met. Their journey showed that even the strongest armor could be opened by trust and hope. The future was still uncertain, but together, they would face it. They knew peace was not easy, but it was worth fighting for. Months passed, and peace grew stronger but fragile like a young plant. Aelara and Jax worked hard to bring humans and aliens together. They met leaders, helped rebuild cities, and healed old wounds. The armor that once kept Aelara trapped now shone with a gentle light. It became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even the strongest walls could be opened with kindness and trust. One day, news came of a new threat, a group from deep space who did not want peace. They believed war was power and planned to attack the fragile alliance. Aelara and Jax knew they had to prepare. The new enemy was unknown and dangerous. The peace they fought for was at risk. They gathered soldiers and leaders from both sides. Together, they trained and planned, knowing they must stand united or fall divided. Jax looked at Aelara and saw the warrior. She was a fighter for peace, not war. She wore her armor not as a prison, but as a shield for all who wanted to live without fear. When the new enemy arrived, the battle was fierce. But this time, humans and aliens fought side by side. Their trust in each other made them strong. Aelara led the charge, her armor glowing brighter than ever. She moved with purpose, protecting her friends and facing the enemy without fear. Jax supported her, coordinating their forces with calm and courage. Together, they fought not just for survival, but for the future they had built. The battle was hard, but in the end, the new threat was pushed back. The alliance stood strong because they had learned to fight with heart, not just weapons. After the fight, peace felt more real. The war was not forgotten, but it was no longer the only story. Hope had found a place in the hearts of many. Aelara and Jax stood together, looking at the stars. The future was still unknown, but for the first time, it was filled with promise. The peace held for many months, but old fears did not disappear. Some still whispered doubts, afraid the new alliance might break. Aelara and Jax worked harder to keep trust alive. They traveled to distant worlds, meeting with leaders and ordinary people. They spoke of unity and strength in friendship. Slowly, more joined the alliance, hoping for a better future. But not all were ready. A secret group plotted in shadows, unhappy with peace and eager to return to war. They believed power came only through fear and control. One night, the group attacked a key outpost. Explosions lit the sky, and alarms rang loud. The Alliance forces rushed to defend their home. Aelara and Jax led the defense. The battle was fierce and close. The secret group fought with skill and hatred, but they faced a united front. The armor that once protected Aelara now shone as a beacon. She fought not for revenge, but to protect her new home and friends. Jax stood beside her, calm and determined. As the battle ended, the secret group was defeated but not destroyed. They slipped away into the darkness, promising they would return. Aelara knew this was a test. Peace was strong, but it required constant care. She looked at Jax and said that their journey was far from over. Together, they would keep fighting, not with weapons alone, but with trust, hope, and the strength to open even the hardest armor. War had scarred many worlds, but now a new hope was rising. Aelara and Jax stood side by side, ready for what the future held. Their journey had changed not only themselves, but many others. Aelara's armor, once a cage, now reflected the light of countless stars. It symbolized freedom and choice, a warrior who had found strength beyond battle. They worked together to rebuild broken worlds and heal old wounds. Humans and aliens learned to live as friends, not enemies. Peace was not perfect, but it was real. One day, news came that the secret enemies were gathering again, stronger than before. Aelara and Jax prepared once more, but this time they were not alone. The alliance had grown. Soldiers and leaders from many planets stood ready to protect their new way of life. They fought not just with weapons, but with trust and hope. The battle was fierce, but different from before. It was a fight for the future, not revenge. Aelara led with courage, and Jax guided with wisdom. Together, they faced the enemy and won. The secret group was defeated, and peace was strengthened. After the battle, Aelara looked at Jax and smiled. She said, "No one could open my armor before, but you showed me the way. Now together we open the way for many." Jax nodded, feeling the weight of their journey. They had faced war, fear, and hate, but had found something stronger: hope and trust. Their story became a legend told across the stars. It reminded everyone that even the strongest armor can be opened, not by force, but by heart. The future was still unknown, but with courage and friendship, it was full of promise.